everybody, Annalisa Six here from Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to give you your January 2023 astrological forecast. It is currently New Year's Eve, and I am sitting in a corner of my house that I normally don't sit in for these videos, but the lighting in the other room is pretty bad. We're having a storm. I live in Yucca Valley in the high desert, and there's a storm rolling in. It's super windy, and the lighting in my house is doing a lot of moody stuff. I'm not advanced enough to have proper lighting. I've only really been doing YouTube videos for a couple of months now, and I'm still kind of getting over the awkwardness of talking into the computer. So bear with me as I get more comfortable through this. I'm wearing a new sweatsuit that I got for Christmas that's by Aviator Nation, which is my favorite clothing brand, and perfect for the Lady of Leisure lifestyle. Matching sweats, very into it. Thought I would share in case anybody wanted to know where they could get one. But we're currently in the midst of a Mercury retrograde in Capricorn that stationed on December 29th, I believe at 24 degrees. Yeah, December 29th, Mercury station retrograde at 24 degrees Capricorn. And so I'm really hoping that all of these videos that I'm recording for you guys get uploaded as flawlessly as possible, because it's not really the best time to be trying to record 13 videos for the new year. And I tend to wait until the very last minute to get these out, because that's just how my life rolls right now. So starting out January, we're going to still be in the Mercury retrograde, and Mercury is making its way from starting tomorrow on the 1st from 23 degrees Capricorn all the way back to 8 degrees. And then it's going to station direct on January 18th at 8 degrees Capricorn, and then make its way back through the sign of Capricorn. So what does that mean? If you're not familiar with Mercury retrograde, Mercury is the planet that rules communication. It also has to do with how we're receiving as well as disseminating information. It can have to do with our perceptions on things, ideas, the way that we are working with our environment around things that come from our minds, if that makes sense. So if you're a writer, you tend to probably get very impacted by Mercury retrogrades. If you're somebody that really likes to have control over your day and you have a calendar and you plan everything out, Mercury retrograde can be really frustrating, because sometimes those plans get disrupted in ways that we didn't plan for, and then we're having to learn through those lessons. So retrogrades in general are a time to reflect and review. I'm gonna see if I can get my dog over here. Bruce, they always choose to bark at stuff when I'm on here. They don't care about barking at anything until I start talking on the computer. So that's a fun thing. So when we're going through a Mercury retrograde, first of all, we're just kind of any retrograde, we're thinking about what do we need to reflect and review on. And the themes that come up typically are whatever sign Mercury is retrograde in. So right now, Mercury is retrograde in Capricorn, and so the themes are Capricorn related. Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign that is ruled by Saturn and has a lot to do with structures that we have out in the world. Our work life, it rules the 10th house of career, and also kind of the way that we put ourselves out into the world. And so not everybody has Capricorn in a career or out in the world placement in their birth chart. So in order to find out where Mercury retrograde is affecting you for the time period that it's in, we look at where we have that sign in our birth chart. So for example, my Capricorn is in my first house in Placidus, my second house in whole signs. And so I would look to those houses in my chart to see where the Mercury retrograde is affecting me. This is not an astrology lesson, so I'm just going to talk about Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. So essentially, up until Mercury stations direct on that day that I mentioned already, which I believe is the 18th, we are in a reflect and review period around structure, and also sometimes our values around the things that we have in our family lineage that are related to tradition. And so we might be in a period of reflecting and reviewing on family traditions, or even societal traditions or structures, and the way that it's impacting our life. The tarot card that is ruled by Capricorn Saturn energy is the Devil, and it's really common for people to pull the Devil card during Capricorn season. But because we've also had Venus in Capricorn, Venus is conjunct Pluto in Capricorn right now, and Mercury in Capricorn retrograde, that energy is elevated. So we're definitely reviewing and reflecting and thinking about family values or societal traditions, structures, and whether or not we want to continue to be a part of them. That's been really accurate and common for a lot of people in my life, where just kind of seeing if the way that they manage their time and, you know, kind of their work life, their job, if that's something that's working for them and what they can do to kind of make it better and improve upon it. So those are some themes that you might be encountering during Mercury retrograde. It's also really common for people we haven't really been talking to come out of the woodwork during Mercury retrograde. And while this isn't in a sign that rules relationships, it does rule family members or people that we perceive as our family. So that could be something coming up for people as well. This is not a good time for you. The first few weeks of January, like, you know, we have a lot of in our culture this kind of need to set intentions and to start a new routine. And when Mercury is retrograde, it's not always the best time for us to be trying to launch something or start something new. It's a great time to be making the plans for it, but not necessarily to pull the trigger. And so you would be better off waiting until February. So if you're kind of starting off this year feeling like you're not really in the mood for New Year's resolutions, or you're kind of feeling like you just want to slug through January, that's actually pretty supported by the astrology to kind of take it slow and not feel this pressure to produce. But you might be knowing that it needs to happen because Mercury in Capricorn still has some pressure to accomplish something. But, you know, we're in that reflect, review, plan it out period, not necessarily take action. Not every astrologer works with shadow periods of retrogrades, and not every astrologer agrees on how long a shadow period is. I'm a very sensitive person, and so I tend to feel shadow periods sometimes more than actual transit. So I do take shadow periods into account when I'm forecasting. So what that means is that after a planet stations direct or before a planet stations retrograde, there's a shadow period where that planet is ingressing or disseminating away from that transit that was happening essentially. And so after Mercury stations direct, the day that it stations direct is usually one of the more problematic days, but then we have the shadow of it for about 10 days afterwards. And so give or take a few days, depending on how sensitive you are. And so that's why I say that February is probably a better month to be launching something or really taking action or trying to get more momentum, because by February, we don't have any planets retrograde. Also in January, besides Mercury retrograde, we also still have Mars retrograde through the last few degrees of Gemini. Actually, just the last eighth degree of Gemini. It stays at 8 degrees pretty much the entire first part of January. It stations direct on the 11th, it looks like, according to this ephemeris. This is universal time, so it might be a little bit different depending on where you are in the world. And once Mars stations direct and Mercury stations direct, we're still working through a shadow period of that energy. So we might not feel immediately like it's time to move forward, but we're going to start to feel more of that space and that release. So again, February is going to be a little bit of a better time for you to launch a new project or get momentum around something. Whereas in the beginning of January, those New Year's resolutions might not start out as strong as we were hoping. So it's okay. Another planet that's been retrograde for the last couple of months that is stationing direct in January is Uranus. And Uranus is the planet of sudden change and action. It also rules chaos, revolution. It's a pretty intense energy, and it stations direct in Taurus at 14 degrees on January 22nd. And so that's going to be the last planet that was retrograde to station direct in January. So again, another reason to kind of wait and let January be a slower start and kind of be kind to yourself. Don't feel like a lot of pressure to need to do a lot in January. Just kind of work through the reflect and review energy that we've been in. Mercury is also the ruler of Gemini that Mars has been retrograde in, and Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And so these energies are kind of swapped, and they're not helping each other out right now in one way, but in another way, they kind of are working symbiotically to kind of help us in that reflect and review period. So once they station direct and they start moving back through the rest of Capricorn and Gemini, things that we've been kind of brewing should start to take form and start to feel more possible again. February, March, and April are some of our better months of the year for setting things in motion. And so I personally, if you are a New Year's resolution person, would set your sights on February being that month. A couple other things that we have going on in January. We have our full moon on January 6th in Cancer. It's at 16 degrees Cancer. And Cancer is the opposite sign of Capricorn. And so when we're having a full moon, it's always whatever the sun sign is, the opposite is always the opposite sign. So Capricorn and Cancer are the cardinal polarities of each other. So Capricorn's earth, Cancer is cardinal water, and the Capricorn Cancer polarity often represents our internal world. So Cancer is very emotional and very home based in our emotional kind of world of how we're processing things in that way. It also rules the moon and the mother. And so those types of themes come up. And then Capricorn has more of an association with the father being ruled by Saturn and has more of this kind of external get it done out in the world energy. But when the moon is in Cancer, we tend to feel this need to retreat. Self-care is a really big theme. The Ace of Cups card in the tarot is a really positive way to think about a full moon in Cancer kind of energy. It's kind of about refilling our cup. But when we're looking at a full moon, we're always looking at the polarity of energies. So how do we balance our external cardinal earth world, you know, the work that we're doing, the stature that we have in society, the values that we have in society, the routines, the structure, stability kind of world with our emotional, private, intuitive world, or, you know, our relationship to our own family lineage can also sometimes come up in traditions around that. So January 6th being our first full moon. Full moons are often associated with manifestation as well as letting things go. And so depending on what you feel called to do for this new moon, that can be a good time to set some intentions around things that you're letting go in this new year, things that you want to call in, and those themes too. So also the Capricorn and Cancer polarity can be really positive for setting intentions around healing any kind of ancestral trauma that you might have that you don't want to bring with you into the new year. Our new moon of January happens on the 21st at 1 degree Aquarius. So by that point, we have already moved into Aquarius season, which happens on January 20th of this year. And so that new moon is going to be at 1 degree and the beginning of the sign of Aquarius. And new moons are also a really good time to set intentions for things that we want to call in. And Aquarius is the sign that is ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. We've had Saturn in Aquarius for some time, and it's going to be moving into Pisces this year. So this is also kind of a last hurrah of Saturn in Aquarius. And this is a really good time for you to be thinking about the change that you want to implement. Aquarius has a lot to do with change. So in Capricorn, we are honoring structure and old systems and traditions. And in Aquarius, we're revolutionizing them, or we're building upon them to make them better. And so that's another reason why the end of January, beginning of February is a better time for us to implement new structures. We're supported more in that in Aquarius season anyways, and with new moon Aquarius energy. So that's something that I would guide towards, is kind of, you know, maybe the full moon's about healing, restorative health, restructuring, analyzing, reflection. New moon is about implementing those changes, setting those intentions, and, you know, being open to kind of building upon the things that you set or planned for during the retrograde, if that makes sense. Let's see what else there is going on for January. I'm using two different ephemerises. We also start out tomorrow, January 1st, with Mercury and Capricorn making a sextile to Neptune, which is a very harmonious energy. But while sextiles are really harmonious, Neptune itself can be a very discombobulating energy. But one of the things I really enjoy about a Capricorn Neptune, Mercury and Capricorn with Neptune and Pisces, aspect hitting itself is that as somebody that has Saturn and Capricorn conjunct in my own charts, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn and Neptune was in Capricorn when I was born. It's a really positive energy for manifestation. And so I really love setting intentions in the new year. I'm a big fan of New Year's resolutions, which I know a lot of people aren't. But when you have Neptune and Saturn meeting up, while it can be very ungrounding and can sometimes lend towards a need to escape reality, it's also really good at taking the vision or the dream that you have and calling it into reality. Even if it's not there yet to take form, setting the intention and the visualization of what you want to call in, Saturn and Neptune help make that possible. And this year we're actually going to have Saturn conjunct Neptune later in the year. And that's going to be an energy that we're feeling as a society for a really long time, which is really awesome for creative people like myself and probably people that are into astrology to start seeing themselves being inspired to create new things, whether that's new music or if you're a painter, you know, being inspired to create new paint or, you know, whatever your job is, whatever you're responsible for doing creatively, you're going to feel more of that inspiration this year. When Saturn and Pisces are making that aspect. Mercury sextiling Neptune can be a little bit more discombobulating because again, Mercury rules the mind. And so we might feel a little more inclined towards escapism. And the healthy way to do that, I think a lot of Neptune transits, people in recovery like myself can feel more inclined to want to escape through substances. It's also common for people to want to relapse or kind of, you know, revisit some of these more unhealthy modalities. But the healthy ways of entering that world are through spiritual practices or artistic practices. So playing music, listening to music, coloring, creating art, painting, watching movies that inspire you, listening to things that inspire you are all really good ways to feed into the Mercury sextile Neptune energy. And so even though we might go into this new year feeling a little ungrounded and foggy, if we channel it in that way, it could end up lending itself to some really good inspiration. January 2nd is a pretty big deal because Venus is going to leave Capricorn and enter Aquarius. And let's see, Venus is going to be in Aquarius for most of January. She enters Pisces on the 27th, it looks like. And so Venus in Aquarius, I tend to associate a lot with Angela Davis. She's an Aquarius. I believe she had Venus in Aquarius. I think Oprah has some strong Aquarius placements. But it's a really good energy for connecting with our communities and wanting to advocate for our communities and wanting to make positive change in our communities. And so January might be a month where we feel a lot of need to connect with people in that way or connect with our communities in that way. Another thing that you can do is look and see where you have Aquarius in your chart, and you'll see that that's where Venus is passing over. And so that'll be an area that's highlighted in a really positive way. Venus is considered to be the lesser benefic in astrology, which means that Venus brings a lot of good fortune. And so obviously everybody's chart is different, and where things are aspected determine whether something's easy or difficult. But overall, Venus, you know, being in this sign is positive, and wherever she's passing through should be highlighted in a good way for you. She's also going to be making a conjunction to Saturn. Let's see when that happens. It looks like the conjunction is exact on January 22nd. So she's going to be meeting up with Saturn. And that'll be interesting to see kind of what happens in your own chart. It's really going to be specific to each person, how Venus conjunct Saturn feels. But Saturn's structure and kind of feels like a blockage sometimes. And Venus is, you know, relational and wants to connect. And so if we are in a relationship, a lot of times Saturn coming in will want us to elevate or make that relationship more official or something that we feel more commitment to. If you have Aquarius in a sign related to work, you might be kind of taking on more responsibility at work, but in a positive way, in some way that you've been working towards. It can be an auspicious placement, despite the fact that Saturn can sometimes bring in some challenges or some harder lessons. It can be a good thing for kind of the way that you're elevating in that part of your birth chart. So overall, I think that should be a positive thing for most people. If taking on more responsibilities with whatever it is you're doing as something that you want, or elevating the relationship that you're in. So oftentimes, if you're in a transit like this and you are dating or you are getting engaged, kind of taking the next step with somebody, or even in a friendship, like kind of that friendship getting closer. On the flip side, it can also be a time that's kind of make or break. So if you're in a job that you've been wanting to leave for a while, Venus conjunct Saturn could be a sign that you're not ready to take the next step with this job. You're ready to take the next step in your life somewhere else. It could also mean that for a relationship. So if the relationship isn't going the way that you wanted it to, it's kind of like a put up or shut up type transit. And it's also happening, towards that end of these other planets in their shadow after they've stationed direct. And so that could also be part of it. You're ready to take that action when Venus conjunct Saturn. Venus is going to enter Pisces at the end of January. That's going to happen on the 27th, and she'll be in Pisces for, it looks like, most of February. And so that'll also be another shift. I personally love Venus in Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and is another placement that's really positive. And a lot of people associate Pisces with feeling a lot of emotions, but Pisces also is the dreamer, the artist, the visionary, and Venus in Pisces really calls upon us to lean into that part of ourselves. And so that's also really great for creativity and art and feeling inspired by those things. It's great for musicians. I'm a musician, and we go through these spells where we feel kind of blocked and like things aren't coming to us. Venus in Pisces can be a really positive time to kind of re-catch our inspiration in that way. There was something else about Venus in Pisces I was going to say, and I already am kind of over talking about that, but I'm excited about that. It's a good energy. Oh, I was going to say that the 9 of Cups card in the tarot has a similar energy to Venus in Pisces. That card is said to be either Venus in Pisces or Jupiter in Pisces. It's considered to be the wishing card in the tarot. So if you get that card, it often will be said that, you can wish for something and you'll most likely get what you wish for. And so it's considered to be such a auspicious energy for manifesting your dreams or gaining more inspiration in that way. So that's really positive. Let's see what else is happening. We had Jupiter move back into Aries over December, and Jupiter is going to continue its way through Aries in February and January for the start of the year. And we don't have too many other planets stationing outside of that into new signs. I think I covered all of that. There are some other transits that are happening for the month of January. We have a Venus sextile to Jupiter, which is extremely positive. Venus in Aquarius sextiling Jupiter in Aries on the 4th of January. Another really auspicious energy. So see where you have Aquarius and Aries in your chart. This is really great for kind of redefining who we are in our lives. And it can also kind of lend itself to delusions of grandeur. Jupiter tends to be a larger than life energy that sees itself that way. And so we have to be a little mindful sometimes, because if we're setting intentions in the new year, we want to really shoot for the moon. We could overshoot our shot and disappoint ourselves if we're not actually willing to show up and do the work. So that's something to be mindful of. Make sure your goals are within the realistic confines of what you actually want to show up for in your life, right? I think it's great to think outside the box, but it's equally great to set yourself up for success. The sun is going to be trining Uranus on the 5th, and so that also lends itself to some potentially surprises that we're not anticipating. I'm not very stoked on that transit, but it also could lend itself to us wanting to make some kind of physical change on how we look in the new year. Like if you're feeling impulsive and you just want to randomly go chop all your hair off, the 5th would be a day that you might do that. You might regret it, so be careful. Mercury retrogrades, we're still in Mars and Mercury retrograde on the 5th, and that's usually not the best time to be making those decisions. But Venus sextile Jupiter, Sun trine Uranus, you might still feel inclined to want to do it. Maybe it's great. Maybe it's everything that you needed. Mercury and the Sun are going to meet up on the 7th in Capricorn. So that might be a day where you feel the need to talk about your feelings and kind of what you're going through a lot. It's a big self-expression energy, especially at work. If you've been having any issues at work, that's something that you'll probably be experiencing more of on that day. Venus is going to trine Mars retrograde in Gemini on the 9th. I think Mars is actually stationing direct right around then, so that's a little bit interesting. Mars Venus trine. That could also kind of, I mean, trines, like, honestly, we see them as good, but they're not necessarily always good. They just move things along fast. So another kind of energy to be a little bit mindful of. There could be some communication conflicts that day potentially, because Mercury is still retrograde, especially in relationships. Mars, we feel very combative sometimes. We can just kind of be flippant and talk about things that maybe the intentions are good. Venus, good intentions, but maybe it doesn't come out necessarily the right way. So mindfulness is going to be really good on the 9th. January 11th, we have Mercury squaring Chiron in Aries, and that's going to be tense energy. So Chiron's been in Aries for a while. Chiron and Aries are wounds around identity and kind of self-perception and confidence. And so Mercury, again, planet of communication, squaring our wound. It would be really easy to take something said to us the wrong way or to hurt somebody else's feelings on the 11th. And again, when I'm speaking about specific days, we always have an orb of influence. So this could be something going on for days at a time. It's not just necessarily on that day. This is just the day that it's exact. Venus is going to be sextiling Chiron on the 12th. So what's interesting, on the 11th, we see conflict, and on the 12th, we see resolution. So Venus sextiling Chiron, it's almost like she's coming in to fix maybe what we were going through the day before. And then Mars stations direct on the 12th. So Mars has been in Gemini forever, and it's going to be leaving its retrograde cycle and finishing its way through Gemini, and will officially be leaving Gemini at the end of March. So we still have a little ways to go, but that'll be kind of an interesting thing to see how we all feel. Sun sextiling Neptune on January 13th. This is another really great energy for creativity, and you know, the sun's still in Capricorn, so it's another great time for self-expression and kind of bringing in the vision into form, essentially. Great energy for ideas. The 14th, Venus is squaring Uranus. So again, we might have some surprises that we weren't anticipating, especially when it comes to relationships, friends, things like that. It's interesting, like when we have a planet like Uranus and Venus making any kind of transit together, good things can come out of something chaotic or something that we didn't anticipate. So even if our plans were spoiled, it's almost kind of like trust that the universe has your back type of energy, because Venus is there to kind of help cushion that in some way. So even though Uranus can be pretty destructive, when we have planets like Jupiter and Venus in the mix, it actually can be like a healthy, good result out of the chaos. So I tend to like those transits, even if they don't feel good in the moment that they're happening. January 16th, we have Mercury in Capricorn making a quincunx, or in conjunct, whichever word you use, to Mars in Gemini. What's interesting about that transit quincunx is they're considered to have a lot of tension, but they're also considered to be something where we have to pull a lot of our own power and resilience out to face that challenge. And that, again, like, positive things tend to come out of us having to do that. So that'll also kind of be interesting. It's kind of that thing too, where I think, like, you know, Mercury's about to station direct. We might be feeling ready. We might be feeling that energy of like, we're ready to start moving forward on things, but it might not still be the time. And so we might be dealing with a little bit of tension and conflict around that, around the 16th. Around the 17th, that's happening on the 17th. Oh, and the 16th. Mercury stations direct on the 18th. While the sun is making a conjunction with Pluto that day. That's going to probably be that's a good stay-at-home day, the 18th, Wednesday the 18th. Wednesday is also ruled by Mercury, so it's cool that it's stationing direct on that day. And then we have on the 20th, the sun enters Aquarius. Mercury is still making that in conjunct to Mars. And then we have on the 22nd, the Venus conjunction to Saturn with Uranus stationing direct. I already talked about that. And let's see, on the 24th, the sun is going to sextile Jupiter. This is a great energy for self-expression and for us healing any of those Chiron wounds that came out around our identity. The end of January is a lot more positive. It's kind of like we have all these transits that are cleaning up some of the conflict and hardship that we had over the last couple of months. And so when we see Venus sextile Jupiter, we might be feeling a wave, the sun sextile Jupiter, we might be feeling a wave of self-confidence of like, I'm ready to conquer this. I'm ready to move on from the challenge and the conflict that I had. Again, we have to be careful because Sun and Jupiter, whenever they meet up, whether it's a sextile, a trine, a conjunction, there can be kind of this flight of Icarus journey where we want to chase the sun, we want to get close to the sun, but we have to stay humble. And so if we try to get too close, we'll get burned, kind of thing. So we need to still be mindful. But this is a great day for self-love and working on acts of self-love. Venus enters Pisces on the 26th. We talked about that a little bit already. The sun is going to trine Mars on the 29th. Again, this is a great opportunity to start getting things into motion. Mercury is not retrograde anymore. We're out of that shadow period pretty much. Mars isn't retrograde, Uranus isn't retrograde. We're definitely starting to enter that, okay, let's get the ball rolling type energy. Mercury is also trining Uranus with the sun trining Mars that day. So that's also really great for new ideas and implementing new ideas. And then the last couple of days of January, we don't have any specific aspects outside of lunar aspects, and I'm not going to share all the moon aspects because those are happening every day in an extreme amount. And I used to write a lunar forecast that went over the lunar placements every day, and it was really great and a great way for me to learn astrology. So I highly recommend doing that if this is something that you're interested in. But it was a lot of work, a lot of free work for me that I just don't have the energy to do anymore. But it was fun to talk about those lunar transits. I might do it again someday. But that's pretty much the synopsis for January. The end of the month is going to be your time to shine, but starting out, it's going to be a slow roll, and there's going to be some obstacles for sure. Stay tuned for the horoscope forecast for each sign coming up after this video, starting with Aries. So happy New Year. I'm excited to do more of these videos. Please let me know in the comments if me running through all of the dates is helpful or not, or you don't really care. You can obviously buy these books and look at all the forecasting for yourself if that's something that you like. I know sometimes these are not as helpful as videos. I know a lot of people prefer videos, which is why I like switching to this format versus writing, even though I really enjoy writing too. Let me know in the comments what you like, what you want. If this was helpful, let me know if you have any questions or anything that I can cover in next month's video. All right, Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in.